Earlier, you talked about the Earl Grey tea and the bergamot in there and how that can help with autophagy. Is there any other adjuncts that you'd recommend to people to at least be aware of and maybe experiment with while they're doing their fasts?
Yeah. I love tea so much. So I had a massive section in the book about tea. I love writing about tea. I love talking about tea. So it's not just about the Earl Grey for me. I see them as like this really cool natural medicine cabinet in the form of tea that people can have based on what they want, what they want to focus on. So I love that section of the book because I think they're the perfect fasting adjunct, like perfect fasting tool because they curb appetite in many ways. So they make your fasting easier. They have really cool catechins like antioxidant polyphenols like EGCG and many other ones that are really beneficial at supporting the fast. They're actually enhancing that physician within in many ways. So I love teas. I think all different types of the green teas that I talk about in specific, like the gyro and the matcha and the sencha and the bancha and all these different types of teas that people can explore with and have fun with during their fast. Coffee has its place. I know that's controversial, but I think that depending on how you metabolize caffeine, and teas have caffeine too, but less caffeine than coffee. But if you are a fast metabolizer of coffee, having that during your fast can support lipolysis or fat burning and support that fast in many ways and just make it more enjoyable for people. Um, and electrolytes, I think, are important too, that are supportive of the fast. So adding in some Himalayan sea salt and water, making sure you're sipping on that throughout your time restricted feeding window or during your fast. So those are all things that I like. Now, the question is, people ask, well, can I add something to my tea or my coffee? Like, what constitutes the breaking of the fast? And I talk about this in the book, but I mean, look, I don't want to be super militant about these type of things because I don't think it's all or nothing. I think many of these things, there's such negligible amounts of them. If you're talking about MCT oil in coffee or ghee in coffee or clarified, butter in coffee or even collagen protein or some sort of protein powder, is that going to break your fast? The answer is no. It's not going to break your fast unless you're having copious amounts of it. There's so much studies looking at fasting mimicking diets, and you're having way more calories than what you're having in those coffees. Now, if you're having multiple amounts of them and they're calorically dense, that's a different story. But like one of them that has some calories, it's so negligible. If it makes your fast easier, then have at it. Maybe try not having it later on. The more metabolically flexible you are, you may not need that long term to fuel you, but in the short term, there's no shame in that at all. If you want to be a little bit specific on the sciencey stuff of it, like looking at the mTOR pathway, it is sensitive to protein, but is a small, like a scoop of collagen protein, going to really mess up your fast and cancel out? I don't think there's enough evidence to show that. It's such a small amount. But if you want to err on the side of, I want to support these longevity pathways, I want to support autophagy, I want to support these stem cell pathways that fasting supports, I probably would leave the protein out, like the collagen protein or plant protein out. But the fats and the tea and the coffee are very supportive of that in many ways.
And you mentioned the MCT oil there. And other than helping keep us full, what other benefits does that provide?
So I love this section of the book too because I love MCT oil. I think it's a good tool used judiciously, right? I mean, it can increase like GI motility and like upset your stomach if you have too much, but the right amount could be quite helpful because it's really clean fuel for your brain. I mean, it passes through the blood-brain barrier. It's very it behaves quite differently than the long chain saturated fats. So it's a great fuel for increased energy. And look, it's supporting ketosis. My bigger, like more, if I'm being picky about things, I would want to get your body to produce its own ketones instead of getting these exogenous external ketones. But in the short term, if it makes your fast easier, I think it's a good, gateway to being metabolically flexible. I think it's a good tool to add to teas and coffees, and it's increased energy, supportive of ketosis. It is can help with curbing appetite, all that stuff. If that makes your fast easier at the beginning, then go for it.
And what about exogenous ketones specifically? jumping right to that next step and taking exogenous ketones during a fast. Is that something you do at all or recommend with patients?
I don't do it. I have done it for experiments like on myself, but I don't do it regularly at all. I'm not against it either. I think if someone wants to do it, if it makes your fast easier, if you're into that biohacking stuff and you really know, hey, I'm someone that's like, I really want improved cognitive performance. I really want to increase energy throughout the day. I think it's a great tool to consider. From a long-term like health standpoint, it's not bad. It's not bad to be on those things at all. They're known to be safe. But I want the body to be producing these ketones endogenously instead of manipulating. Because a lot of these exogenous ketone companies will maybe explicitly say this or inadvertently say this, is that you don't have to change the foods that you're eating. Just take this, and increases energy levels because it'll raise your ketones, even if you keep your carbohydrates at like 500 grams a day. And in theory, that's true. I mean, they can, but it's not, you're not fat adapted just because your ketones are high. You are metabolically flexible when insulin is balanced, when blood sugar is balanced, when inflammation is lower, and ketones are there cyclically. That's fat adaptation. So you can manipulate physiology and make your numbers look great on a ketone meter, but is that really improving your quality of life long term? You may have increased brain function, but beyond that, like, what's the goal of this long term?
That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of other benefits to be had, and to be honest, the simplicity and the fact that fasting is free, it's just such a simple primal tool. It kind of takes away from that.
Yeah, well said. It's completely free, and it's really awakening these pathways. That is our birthright in many ways. I mean, researchers estimate that our genetics haven't changed in like 10,000 years. So these amazing things, in many ways, this physician within is decreasing the chasm between genetics and epigenetics. It's more in alignment with the biochemistry. So it's from an ancestral health perspective, it's decreasing the evolutionary mismatch, which I love that. And in many ways, I see that in patients. I get excited about it. I get excited about it more than they do sometimes, but they get excited too when their quality of life is improved. I get excited when like the labs and things improve, that they that are reflectors of why they feel the way that they do. It's really cool to see. And the human body is so smart if you just give it the time to recalibrate itself.